Everybody, it's episode 24. And in honor of Ken Griffey Jr., I'm going to bring in my partner in crime a little quick tonight. But it is the Wise Guys episode here for April 22nd, episode 24. I am one of your hosts, of course, the Big Rican on Sports, Mike Martinez, and my partner in crime, Mr. JC Bluno, Jim Cornetti, and James. Yes, I brought up Ken Griffey Jr. because it is episode 24. But we got a lot to get to tonight, my friend. We got the draft. We have the absolute turd the Cavs left in the Garden last night. We have the NHL playoffs. We have BS in baseball. It's going to be a fun night, sir. My friend.
It is. It is. Well, great to see you again, as always, Mike. I know we actually talked yesterday on the ride into work. I'm actually enjoying those morning chats now. It's a little bit of a distraction from wanting to get out of my car and pull people out of theirs on the drive in.
And I understand that. The only difference being I'm already at the office for a while by the time I call you.
Right. You're 5 minutes away, and it's whereas me, I'm sitting on the off ramp for 5 minutes.
Well, that's what, Brainerd and Chagrin.
Yeah. Chagrin, Richmond.
Even worse.
Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean,
sometimes it may be good, sometimes it may be shit.
And away we go.
Yes, sir. So, where would you like to start tonight? I think we should end with the NFL draft only because that'll segue into next Thursday. With our live draft reaction. It will be at 9 o'clock, so we won't get, the first pick in with as long as ESPN and the NFL take. But
and then again, with the way that some of the teams, take in the coverage, who's to say that we don't come on right as Carolina's making that first pick?
That's very true.
They might give them an hour apiece.
Oh.
As if they don't milk the goddamn thing enough.
Yeah, that's, ESPN sucking at the teat of the NFL. I want to start with something else. Did you see the suspensions? Jamison Williams and 3 other players for gambling?
Yeah, it's I wonder if they had Calvin Ridley's number on speed dial.
I want to ask you a serious question. Where does the NFL get off suspending people if the only thing that put them over the top is the number one sport in the country?
Because it's so much easier to bet on football than any other sport, to be honest.
Exactly. Yeah, no, you no longer have to call Frankie Knuckles in order to shout out to my buddy Frank from upstate New York. You don't have to call anybody like that to make a bet anymore. You can do it on your phone.
Yeah, it's your buddy Frank and everything. I'm actually reminded of another Frank who everyone used to call way back in the 50s and 60s. Wasn't his name Sinatra? We all remember the legendary clip of calling Carmine and Nunzio. Oh, thank you, Don Rickles.
Oh, Rickles was the best. So let me ask you this, and I'm being serious. They have an official gambling sponsor in the NFL. Every analyst who has worked the NFL games that are former players all do DraftKings spots. They do daily fantasy spots. Why do you think the NFL is trying to take the moral high ground on this and not on a dude who likes to touch women that have to massage his body?
Because if they don't take the moral high ground on it, basically, all of these states that actually passed the their gambling things. Ohio did theirs at the first of the year. All these states funneling into that. If they actually start taking moral high ground, they could end up shutting a lot of those out already. And there goes a really big portion of now your revenue.
No, and I get that, but what I'm saying is they're taking a hard line on gambling. To be very honest with you, if they're not betting on their own team and you don't see Jamison Williams, former Buckeye and Alabama wide receiver, dropping balls on wide open things, what's the problem? Don't give me integrity of the game when you're in bed with the gambling sites. I'm sorry.
I wouldn't actually take umbrage if they were betting on other sports, but the fact that they're betting on their own league, I have a problem with.
Yeah, but do they bet on their own league or they bet in XFL? Because this came out awful late if they were betting on the NFL.
Yeah. You almost figure they got to find something to do in the off season. Because you figure we got the draft and then OTAs are next month, and then you've got a 3 or 4 month break.
And Jamison Williams plays in Detroit, and there's nothing to do in that godforsaken state either.
Right, because the Tigers stink, Red Wings are home, and the Pistons are home. You got nothing going on right now.
Exactly. I don't get it, man. I saw that today, and I wanted to bring it up to you, and I'm sorry we kind of jumped off the rails immediately with that one, but that just kind of blew my mind. And I didn't see it until McAfee did something on it. I haven't seen what Pat had to say, but I'm sure it was of the epic and hilarious that it always is with Pat McAfee.
Yeah, because I don't even if you see me looking to my right here throughout the course of the evening, I've got a new setup where I've got a new monitor off to the side there. So it's like so this way I can actually have the wire up on one screen all night long here. So really everything that I'm seeing with the NFL is the Falcons releasing Hayward, the Cowboys picking up CeeDee Lamb, the Bills extending Brandon Bass, and now it's at the top of their headlines, but it's not a breaking news that Williams and 3 other Lions suspended for betting. And they apparently did get enough of a story in here with this because it was just updated, I think, within the hour.
Still nothing on Derrick Henry like we were talking about before we came on the air?
No, because that's speculation at best. That might actually be I might actually see something as an ESPN Plus subscriber because I get the insiders as well as also the NHL pay-per-view package with that. So I might see something in a rumor mill, but I don't think we're going to actually, until it gets, generally the rule of thumb in the media is that you don't potentially throw a story out there unless you've got a well-known writer with at least 2 qualified sources to be able to speak up. And I don't want to say confirm the report, but at the very least indicate that it might have some legs.
Well, yeah, and if that is what happens, then I have to say shout out to our buddy Willie Epting Jr. because that's who I saw it on. He had tweeted that out. There is also speculation coming out about the draft that we got to talk about, but let's get to the egg laid by the Cleveland Cavaliers in New York. After a dominant game 2 that can only be described as a dismantling of that Knicks team. Quite honestly, Jim, and I don't mean to sound callous as I say it, what the fuck happened in the Garden last night?
Game 1, we got to bring this all the way back to game 1. The
Okay.
Cavs were basically the play-in last year. It's technically a playoff, but it's not the playoffs. It's like the Big Ten championship game. It's not the playoffs. It's almost like a playoff to get into the playoff, so to speak. So, and that's why they call it a play-in. It's your qualifying game. It's like your first 4 that we actually had last month. And kudos to UConn for winning the championship here a couple of since our last episode. But in game 1, JB ran with a very short bench, did not get a whole lot of other guys involved. There were a lot of people thinking, is Karis LeVert even going to play in the playoffs? And then, they fall behind huge, make the run at the end. In game 2, they did dismantle New York because they expanded the bench. They decided to get physical. Last night, I will admit, fair weather or not, 5 minutes into the third quarter, I shut it off because I said that there's no way that this team is going to come back right now. The shots were there. They were not falling. They got good looks, but not when they needed to. They actually started to live and die by the three that they lived on in game 2. You can't do that going into the Garden. Now let's actually see what happens, tomorrow, because they're the early game tomorrow. You could come home 2-2, or you could be down 3-1, and this thing could essentially be over as by Tuesday,
which would be disappointing. Not catastrophically disappointing, because we expected them to be good. I don't think I know you and I had lofty expectations for this team once the Donovan Mitchell trade was made. I don't know if we saw a top 4 seed in the East. I saw maybe 5, maybe 6 without having to play the play-in at the beginning of the year, but they gelled. And I think J.B. Bickerstaff and his staff can get them into a game plan that can get them there tomorrow. This is not the LeBron teams that had a short bench for a reason. This is a deep team that 1 through 12 played well all year. I will say this. If they lose this thing in 5 games on their home floor, that's going to leave a nasty taste in the front office's mouth, and they're going to make changes.
Here's my question. You let Kevin Love go in favor of Dean Wade. Why is Dean Wade not suited up in the first 3 games whatsoever? And given Jared Allen a rest, or Evan Mobley?
That pissed me off. Because this is when they could have used Kevin Love. Now, let's break it down. This is the guy who was one of the big 3 that won them their title.
His number's going to be up in the rafters.
Agreed.
He spent 8 years here.
8 years, a championship, 4 runs to the finals. Of course, one he wasn't a part of because of Kelly Olynyk being the white Draymond.
And he also factors into he's in the top 10 in most offensive categories in franchise history.
And he stayed. Let's not gloss that over. When this team dismantled after LeBron left, he stayed. He signed the big extension. He stayed with them. He said he knew he was going into a rebuild, and he wanted to stay in Cleveland. I'm sorry. I would not have bought him out. I wouldn't have. Not knowing what you knew coming down the stretch. Look, Donovan Mitchell is an all-star player. He is a primetime player in the postseason. Who else has played in the postseason on that team besides Donovan Mitchell?
Right.
Not counting the play-in game. Nobody. This is when Kevin Love would have been invaluable to this team. And
I think Jared might have actually had maybe a little bit of playoff experience like that first year in Brooklyn. But he was a role player.
Yeah, now look, Miami's up 50. Well, last I looked was up 15 points on the Giannis-less Bucks.
6:09 to go. They're up 108-87. Yup, they're up 21. So that one's now going 2-1.
And yeah, there's no guarantee Giannis is back for game 4 either.
Right.
So you're talking about, and now let's talk about this. Let's play the long game a little bit. If Cleveland comes out of this series and Milwaukee loses and Embiid isn't right, look who now has home court throughout the playoffs.
Boston.
They've beaten Boston on their home floor.
I think now we're finally starting to see the cream rise to the top in the Eastern Conference. And as much as it pains me to say it, I think right now Philadelphia, even if Embiid's at 75%, I think Philadelphia might be the team to beat in the East.
If Embiid's only at 75%, Boston's going back to the finals.
I can't believe I'm also going to say this. I got to give kudos to the Brooklyn Nets. They stripped things down. They took 2 of their studs away and essentially did addition by subtraction because they're now set up much better for the future now. And they could have actually taken Kyrie and KD, and then also Harden, from a couple of years ago. and they could have actually they could have folded up. They could have quit. We all thought that they were going to start falling quickly. They did. They fell into the play-in. They got themselves back into the 6. Yes, they got swept, but they were just flat out overmatched by a much better team. But kudos to the Brooklyn Nets for not folding, and they could have actually done what Dallas did, is, make moves at the deadline, forecast for next year, get a good draft pick, but they didn't, and they actually played Philadelphia tough in 3 out of those 4 games. And I think they're a much better team now than they would have been next year, because Dallas is going to be middle of the road right now with Kyrie and Luka, and they're also going to be $750,000 lighter, and they still could potentially end up losing a draft pick. Phoenix is up 3-1, but I don't see them getting out of the West.
No. The Western Conference, I think the Joker is going to finally get to the finals.
I think it would be nice because Denver's never been to the finals. But before we kind of get off the NBA playoffs here, let's talk one more series if we can. And it's the one that, if you're a Cleveland fan like you and I are, it's the team that you do not like hearing about. In Game 4 tomorrow, Ric Flair is back.
Ric Flair?
Yeah, because he's got a proclivity for kicking guys in the nuts.
Hold on. Do not disrespect the Nature Boy by comparing him to Fat Bobby Brown.
Have you seen the stories that have come out about Ric Flair as a human being in the last few years? I don't have a whole lot of respect left for Ric Flair at all.
I have less for Draymond.
Agreed.
So hold on.
While I'm thinking about this, you remember? I know you're not a big wrestling guy, but you remember the stable from about maybe 10 years ago, Evolution.
Batista, Flair, Orton, and Triple H.
Right. Which of those four guys has been the most recent one to have a wrestling match?
Orton, right? Triple H left the boots in the ring. Who did Ric Flair wrestle besides Father
Flair's
Time?
final match was about 6 months ago in Japan, and his son-in-law, Andrade Cien Almas, who's married to his daughter, Charlotte Flair, greatest women's wrestler of all time, and still going, wrestled his final match on pay-per-view. Orton's been sidelined since last, I want to say, June or July with a back injury. Triple H hasn't wrestled in several years, and Batista walked away after WrestleMania 4 years ago. So Ric Flair is the most recent member of that stable to have a wrestling match.
Wow, I didn't realize Flair wrestled in Japan. But again, if you think about it, Batista walked away for the Marvel franchise. Orton, of course, would still be wrestling had he not been injured.
Right.
And Triple H had the heart issue a couple of years ago.
Right. Yeah. Last year.
Was it last year?
Yeah.
And the thing about that stable was, I'm just going to build off that real quick, and then we'll move on to back to the NBA. I got to tell you, those dudes, and if you haven't seen Randy Orton's wife give him an RKO into a pool yet, must see TV.
I think that was the beach, but I think also I think the clip you might be thinking of is where he gives his kid the RKO into the pool.
Oh no, he hit his kid on one. I'm talking. There's another one where he gets out of the pool, sits on the side of it.
That's right.
Puts
That's
the hair
right.
through, and his wife just hit him. It was perfect.
There's a clip I got to send you. John Moxley's wife, Renee Paquette, is like the premier wrestling journalist right now, and she's got her own podcast, and she had on Kurt Angle's wife and Orton's wife on the same episode because they're like best friends, and they go into the story of how they met them, and Orton's wife Kim says that they went to a signing at a mall where his kid held up a sign saying RKO my mom, and Orton hit on her at ringside later on that night. I want to say it was in Rochester. Hilarious story.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So yeah, what are the Warriors? One more loss and they're done.
It's 2-1 right now.
Sacramento's up 2-1.
Kings held court in Sacktown, and then Golden State with the big win the other night, game 4 tomorrow, and Draymond's back. First win, the game 1 win, first win in the city of Sacramento in the playoffs in 17 years.
Since the Chris Webber, Peja Stojakovic, Mike Bibby, Jay
Vlade.
Williams, White Chocolate
Yeah.
Teams. It's got to be more than well, no, because 17 years was 06. White Chocolate was in Miami for that title, so that wasn't that team, but yeah, the Vlade D-Box, that team was the early 2000s against those epic Western Conference Finals against the Lakers.
Yeah.
God, I hope.
Can I go off? Let me 10-second events here. NBA, get your shit right with the uniforms in the playoffs. Teams should be wearing white at home, not on the road. I did not tune in to game 2 in Sacramento the other night to see the old purple and black court with the Kings wearing purple and black and silver on their uniforms and the Warriors wearing white. Get your shit together.
See, that I don't mind, because
they call them home whites for a reason, Mike.
I agree. I understand where you're coming from. I personally don't mind, because I find the Cavs maroons they wear at home to be the better uniform than the whites for some reason. I mean, the whites in the finals runs with LeBron I thought were great. But yeah, Sacramento wore those even back in the day at home.
Yeah, well, they were like their newer ones. They weren't the throwback purple. They need to actually bring the black into the fold, because the purple and graphite right now, it's good, but it's not who they should be.
No, and I agree with you. No, you should wear white at home, especially in the playoffs.
But congratulations to Mike Brown for winning unanimous Coach of the Year.
You know what? That's
agreed.
Huge.
Agreed, because go up and down their roster right now. They don't have a jump off the page superstar. De'Aaron Fox is like there, but he's not there.
And Buddy Hield is in Indiana.
Right.
Yeah, Mike Brown. Look, we get on the bandwagon that LeBron has carried so many coaches to the finals. Mike Brown was always a good coach. And I think it's ironic that he is playing against the team he was an assistant for, the top assistant for 6 years. As Oliver sits down next to me. He's looking for attention. And with Bobby asleep and Steph watching, I think Steph's watching Outer Banks upstairs. She told me the intro was too loud. She could hear me and she had her earbuds in. Yeah, exactly. Kudos to Mike Brown. I mean, that's a great coaching job. I was doing some, just had something on in the background the other day, and we were talking about how the Cavs had lost to Sacramento. And we were like, they're going to come down to earth. And here's Sacramento in the playoffs. Playing outstanding. So, yeah, no, big up to them, and I hope they beat the shit out of Golden State.
Yeah, it's I don't see Golden State, if this pushes to 7, I don't see how they win win Game 7 at the Golden One Center. I really don't, especially as loud as that place got. Yeah.
So let's segue into the town that they used to call home real quick. And it has been announced that the Oakland Athletics will take a page out of the Raiders' book and leave Oakland and move to Las Vegas. The deal being signed this week. It's off the strip. They are in talks to build a multi-billion-dollar stadium in Oakland. So here's the craziest shit about it. You ready for this? We all know Steve Cohen's the richest owner of baseball. And he's throwing money around. And by the way, Ohtani has said he's done if they fall out of contention. So cash the $500 million check and come to New York. But anyway, do you know the A's owner is the 5th richest owner in baseball?
Yep. And that's where this gets even more scary. I've got a litany worth of facts and figures and historical reference relating to this. It's all.
I mean, over the weekend had their 50th anniversary of the 73 championship, which was the middle of their run of 3 in the early 70s. They won 72, 73 because they beat the Mets. So, of course, they had it when the Mets were there. Alonso hit one that landed in San Francisco in that game. And the Mets won, but I digress. You're talking that stadium that's falling apart.
Built in 1969.
1966. They were there with the Raiders. Oakland. The A's came from Philadelphia in '69.
Oh, okay, yeah.
My dad and I were talking about it this morning. That's why I knew that. But in all seriousness, you're talking about a stadium that, in its run, has hosted 6 World Series, 4 winners. The 72, 73, 74 A's, and of course the 89 A's and the Earthquake World Series. And the other 2 was the Dodgers winning in 88 and Cincinnati sweeping a heavily favored Oakland team in 1990. The Todd Benzinger, Chris Sabo, Cincinnati Reds. It blows my mind this guy's worth that kind of money, that he has not allowed Billy Beane to build a team that could have kept this team in Oakland. And I fear that this move to Las Vegas, this guy's going to throw some money, and Billy Beane's going to be out of a job, which would be horrific.
Because you look at it right now with their – let me pull up the out-of-town scoreboard real quick.
You're getting smoked.
Yeah. So they're an MLB worst 4-17. They've given up a league-high 155 runs. The next closest team is Colorado at 133. The lease is up in Oakland after 24, which actually means they're going to end up moving into Las Vegas Ballpark where their AAA team, the Aviators, play, which means they're going to have to relocate the Aviators for 2 years. They're going to move into there for the 2025 season. Once the move becomes official, they're going to play there for 25 and 26 because the park's not going to be built until 27. And let me throw a trivia question out there. The A's moving now will mean this is the first franchise since whom in Major League Baseball to have won a World Series in their history and then moved.
The Milwaukee Braves.
God damn it.
Dude. Do you want to know why I haven't been on Jeopardy yet? Because the Jeopardy online exam makes Chinese algebra look easy.
The 1957 Milwaukee Braves were the 3rd team in 4 years combined. If you actually go back to the 55 Dodgers and the 1954 New York Giants, all 3 of those teams then relocated out west. This is also going to be the 3rd time the athletic franchise has moved over the course of their entire lineage, which will now be a major league record.
Philly, Kansas City, and Oakland.
And now Vegas. Yep.
You know what really bugs me about this, Jim? And no, my internet's better here, so it's not going to freeze when we talk about Vegas not being what it used to be. We just talked about suspensions in the NFL for gambling. We have 3 major franchises with the Golden Knights in the gambling capital of the United States. You and I talked about this, Wednesday? When we talked earlier, Tuesday or Wednesday. The fact that the city of Oakland is going to go from 3 professional sports franchises, not even 6 years ago, to 0. And now we're going to have 3 of them in Las Vegas. And then you also have to figure if the NBA ever expands to 32, Las Vegas is going to be the first one up there. You got to look at either Seattle, Kansas City, or Nashville to be 32 because everyone's going 32 at this point. But it's but
you can't really fault Oakland. They've done everything. You can't fault the A's franchise because they've done everything, and the city's the one that's let them down over these years. We all saw the story of the possum in the broadcast booth earlier this week.
You know whose broadcast booth that was, right?
Yes.
I
saw it. Yeah. Did you see Chris Mad Dog Russo's rant about it on ESPN?
No, Chris Mad Dog Russo makes me want to jump off a bridge.
Right, but you kind of have to watch it on YouTube because it's completely justified with the way that he goes off.
I'm not saying he's not justified. I just cannot stomach him. Kind of like Stephen A.
But I'm always,
I got one off topic. I thought of this the other day, and I meant to tell you, but I was working a rant in my head for the next Big Rican show, which hopefully will be the next couple of weeks. I called Paul Feinbaum the Jimmy Hart of college football.
With the megaphone and everything?
The mouth of the South. I'm sorry.
I'm always going to have an affinity for Jimmy Hart not because of his work with Hogan, but his work with the Hart Foundation.
Me too, but am I wrong? Pregnant pause.
See, I'm actually trying to figure of like justifying not using him and maybe like the Doctor of Style Slick. Because he's damn sure not Bobby Heenan.
Slick is RG3. And if we're talking college football, of course, I was Bobby Heenan.
Yeah. Well. Yeah, but Heenan was hated.
Corso wasn't. Kurt Hennig.
I'm not going to be able to do it. Almost. I tried to do the pen flip.
Spit gum in the air and slap it out of your head.
I used to be able to do that.
Okay, we went off the rails real quick. I'm sorry. I didn't mean to interrupt you. It popped into my head, and if I forgot it, I'd kick myself.
But, I'm always a sucker for, when franchises move or, get a new arena built or change logos or uniforms. And the Arizona Cardinals new uniform is a joke.
So are the Arizona Cardinals.
Correct. With also the fact that Oklahoma built Kyler Murray a statue that they apparently unveiled earlier today outside the stadium in Norman.
All the Heisman Trophy winners get statues. Baker's got one too.
But, it has to lead me to believe, are you going to call them the Las Vegas Athletics? Do you change the name? Does Oakland possibly try to grab, although you're never going to see baseball come back there, are they going to change something up where they may try to hold on to the name, kind of like what you had with Tennessee and Houston, which you had between Cleveland and Baltimore?
I don't think Oakland has a right to hold on to the name of the precedent set by the Indianapolis/Baltimore Colts. You got to remember the Browns situation. As much as Oakland's had success throughout the years as a franchise, whether it's Philadelphia or Oakland, they're not a cornerstone franchise. The Browns, for the majority of their history, have been a cornerstone franchise in the NFL. And quite honestly, Art Modell did that town dirty. This town just did the Oakland Athletics dirty. Because for all the crybaby crap about Modell, Art never won a trophy. The A's have 4.
And if any
Colts had how many? They had at least one Super Bowl. The other teams that have moved that we talked about before, the Dodgers moved 3 years after a championship. The Giants moved 4 years after a championship. The Braves went from Milwaukee to Atlanta, 3 or 4 years, maybe even a little bit longer.
Something like that. Yep.
After a championship. And this would be this team's 4th town, and it's been the Athletics the entire time. They're not changing.
Yeah, and then let's also look at that. We're also in kind of uncharted territory because baseball is the sport where not a whole lot of teams move in the last 20, 30 years. The Montreal Expos are about the only one that we can think of.
The Expos are the only ones that have moved.
Oliver just kicked the stupid can.
You still got me?
Yeah.
Let me make sure the audio is right. So that's what I thought.
There we go. Sorry, the mic was wrong too. Yeah, they moved. They had no choice. They really had no choice because, again, a team that was very good lost its fan base because of the strike. I mean, look at that 94 Expos team.
Right. Remember when who was predicted to be the World Series that year?
The
Cleveland Indians and the Montreal Expos.
So I mean, come on. This is a different animal. This is a team that's now going to move and make the big moves to be successful because of the investment from Las Vegas. I mean, the Aviators draw really well.
The Raiders don't have a quarterback and are going to pack at least 90 to 95% in that stadium.
Wait, hold on. They have the Ken doll. I don't know why you're discounting the Ken doll.
I stand by my statement.
I do too. I just wanted to call him the Ken doll.
But and segueing over the NHL, and we'll come back to baseball here in a couple of minutes. But the Vegas Golden Knights have been to the playoffs 6 of their first 7 years in the NHL. They've been to a Stanley Cup final and actually just won a double overtime game in the first round of the playoffs against the Winnipeg Jets, which was one of the greatest third periods and overtimes I've ever seen. The Knights were up 4-1 on the road in Winnipeg, and Winnipeg scores 3, including the game-tying goal with 6 seconds in regulation, and then loses in double overtime. In the NHL, we also saw the Seattle Kraken in their second year get their first playoff win in their first ever playoff game against the defending champion Avalanche the other night. Then we saw a 79-year-old record get broken last night, and shout out to our old high school buddy Seth Landisman, the diehard Carolina Hurricanes fan. The New York Islanders score 4 goals in 2 minutes and 18 seconds in the third period last night and win that game 5-1. That game was 1-1 with about 6 minutes to go, and then the Islanders put up 4 straight in 2 minutes and 18 seconds and win that game, and it's 2-1 right now. The previous record, the 1944 Montreal Canadiens scored 4 goals in 2 minutes and 35 seconds in an 11-0 win over the Toronto Maple Leafs in 1944.
So here's the question. How many goals did Maurice Richard score in that game?
I want to say it was 4.
Jeez. That's a great list. Look at you bringing the stats up. I'm impressed, my friend.
Right, but it's we saw Vegas draws extremely well for the Knights. They sell out every game because it was also the first one that got the ball rolling there. They were there the year before the Raiders moved. They were still building. T-Mobile Arena was basically set up and ready to go for UFC events and everything, and it's one of the best arenas in the country. So when the A's move, shifting back to baseball now, it's definitely something where they're going to go all out, not just because of the town that they're in. The stadium in Houston, I can't even think of the name of it. I don't want to call it Reliant because that's Houston. But they're on. What's that?
The baseball park?
No, the football stadium.
I think it is Reliant.
Allegiant.
Reliance
in Houston.
Oh, you're talking about in Vegas. I'm sorry.
Yeah. So Reliant Stadium is going to host a Super Bowl. You're going to have I think another year or two, you could potentially have the Stanley Cup final back in Vegas. You've got all-star games there, so you know that it's ripe for an NBA team because of how well, they show up and show out in Vegas for that. The stadium's going to be right off the strip. There was actually talk that they were going to knock down where the old Stardust and MGM Grand lot were and put it right on the strip, but it doesn't make a whole lot of sense. You put them a little bit off the strip. You still put them near downtown because you don't want to put them straight in downtown. But it's perfect location. It makes more sense. Vegas is the new it town. Vegas is now what Charlotte was 25 years ago.
Yes.
And I have to think if baseball ever expands to 32, you got to put a team in Charlotte.
They won't. If baseball goes to 32, like they're talking. I think this move may actually usher that in. Especially now with the pitch clock and the games being faster and all the schmucks at ESPN getting what they want, bastards. Not that I'm bitter. But I think you're going to see another Midwestern town.
Nashville?
Maybe Nashville. Don't sleep on something down here in the deeper south. Can't believe I'm saying that still. Got our driver's licenses today from down here.
Yeah, my new one just arrived in the mail the other day. That's actually part of why I was a couple of minutes late, is I was trying to make sure I didn't shred the wrong one.
Yeah, I was putting the kid to sleep. And I think you have to think of Portland. You have to, could there be another city in California? Could Sacramento host a major league team?
I don't know about Sacramento. Because let's also be honest, up until they built the new arena for the Kings, Sacramento doesn't draw.
How far is it from Oakland to Sacramento?
Good 3 hours, 4 hours. You got to remember, Sacramento's closer to Northern California than anything.
Yeah, but so is Oakland. Oakland's in the northern part, but near San Francisco. And speaking of that, while we're talking about Major League Baseball and stupidity, so the Mets played the A's last week. We're talking about the Possum. You know where they're playing right now?
I'm cheating.
You'll see the stupidity that is the Major League Baseball schedule makers in just a moment.
Oh, yeah, they got beat by the Giants just now.
Tell me why the Mets played Oakland last weekend. The Dodgers, Monday through Wednesday, and then the Giants this weekend. When, they just had to drive a bus across the fucking bridge to play the Giants when they were in Oakland. It's been almost 30 years. The bridge has been over 30 years. The bridge has been rebuilt, guys.
It's because they've got a $394 billion payroll. Fuck them.
It's a dick move, Jim.
Last thing on the A's, I think it's a good thing, because at least we've seen professional teams play in smaller arenas while things are being built. We saw the Spurs get relocated to the to the Alamo Dome. We saw the Saints get moved to the Alamo Dome, much smaller than we actually saw the Blue Jays having to play in Buffalo during the pandemic for a year and a half. We've got, we're going to have the Athletics playing in a 18,000 seat baseball stadium until their state-of-the-art 38,000 seat stadium is going to be built. But I got to say, at least they're doing the smart thing, unlike what we talked about last month with the Arizona Coyotes playing in a 5,500 seat college arena with no guarantee of when their new arena could be built, if they do it all, because they still haven't ironed anything out with the city of Tempe to build a new arena. So you figure if they were to sign something tomorrow, you're looking at 6 months before you break ground, 3 years to build the place. So, this is also where I think you've got the A's finally seeing the writing on the wall, looking for their out, getting, knowing that their lease is expiring and using the opportunity to basically be a lame duck team for next year and then move, and play in a smaller place because you're still not drawing anything now. You're not going to be competitive, for those 2 years. And then hopefully you get a team that might contend by the time that new building opens, which should, so it's going to be packed anyway, put the quality product on the field. Whereas the Coyotes stink right now, and they've, and the NHL needs to actually have somebody step in, buy the franchise, and move them to Houston. Because the hockey in the desert is a joke.
Gary Bettman's taking a bath on that franchise. Wasn't it Arizona, the Coyotes that hired Gretzky at one point in time?
Yes. He was their, he was an owner coach. He was a part owner / coach, and now he's a TNT analyst, and a very good one, I might add, on their intermission show.
It's like having when Magic was in studio with the NBA guys. You're talking about the.
I got to admit, and I'm actually glad that I brought that up and you followed up on it. Off topic here before we shift into our last, section of the night. Who do you think has the best sports coverage of any major network out there right now?
Fox.
You think?
I think Fox for this reason. Now let's talk about their baseball broadcast.
Now let's talk the whole package. Let's talk all the sports that they cover. Right. We're talking graphics, studio analysts, and just overall knowledge. So the entire package.
Let's talk studio analysts for baseball right now with Fox. And Kevin Burkhardt, who cut his teeth on SNY, which is, yes, I'm a homer. The SNY booth is the preeminent booth in all of baseball. There have been polls. There have been opinions. It's a fact. They are the best booth in the game. Kevin Burkhardt cut his teeth with Hernandez and Cohen and Darling. On that panel, David Ortiz, Frank Thomas, Alex Rod. As much as I cannot stomach A-Rod as an in-game analyst, in studio, he's impeccable. Their broadcast team, John Smoltz, who is phenomenal, and Joe Davis, who, if no one knows who Joe Davis is, he was the hand-picked replacement by Vince Scully to take over in the Dodgers booth. If you got Vince Scully's seal of approval, I will take it. Then we jump to the NFL, the preeminent NFL coverage, the long-form game day show with the coach and Terry Bradshaw and all those boys. Then you have in the booth Burkhardt and Charles Davis from New Paltz, New York, doing the in-game, and they are impeccable. You have the smaller game guys, which are also phenomenal. And when you get to college football, forget it. Joel Klatt and Gus Johnson are the preeminent booth in college football. The pregame show is only second-rated because game day has been an institution for 30 years. And when Lee Corso retires, it will cease to be that institution. Fox covers all sports with integrity. ESPN sucks at the teat of the NFL. Think about it this way. All the highest rated games have all been on Fox the last couple of years, whether it's baseball, whether it's All-Star game for baseball, which is still higher rated than any other All-Star game in sports. As much as it pains you to hear this, the highest rated college football game the last 5 or 6 years running has been Ohio State, Michigan on Fox.
For now, until it jumps to ESPN after next year.
Remember, the Big Ten doesn't jump to ESPN. They stay on Fox.
Okay, that's right.
ESPN loses the Big Ten. Hence why they wanted Ohio State, Michigan to play in the national championship game in LA. It would have been their last big payday from the Big Ten.
Me personally, I think for the quality of a broadcast when I'm watching it and they don't get three of the major sports, I think for my money, CBS. I think for their golf coverage, their college football, their college basketball, their NFL coverage, I'll take Jim Nance over anybody.
Jim Nance and Romo, when they're together, is phenomenal. I think I lean Fox because
I could listen to Ian Eagle call anything. I can listen to him call college football, college basketball. I relish March because I get to hear Ian Eagle and Jim Nance for 15 games in a 3-week span.
no, and that's phenomenal. And the Masters is Sunday at the Masters with Jim Nance.
I mean, that's what I'm actually, right after I finish up the triple header going on at the same time I've got tomorrow. I was telling you earlier, I've got the Guardians, Marlins, Cavs, Knicks, and Islanders, Canes all playing at 1:00 Eastern. Immediately after that's over, I flip over to the Zurich Open for the final round on CBS.
Yeah, Jim Nance calling golf is something you have to listen to. Vern, when he would call the SEC games, now it's Brad Nessler. Of course, it's still phenomenal. I think I lean Fox for their in-studio coverage more.
Yeah, I gotta say though, Turner Sports is nipping at these guys' heels a lot.
Sports, yeah, well, Turner Sports has set the standard with basketball coverage for forever.
Yeah, it's because we don't have to listen to Mike Breen yell bang every 6 seconds. But I think I'll take watching a basketball game on TNT over anything, especially with the studio analysts. And then this is the first time I've watched hockey on TNT since I picked cable back up on New Year's Eve. Because everything else I was watching for all of my teams, I was watching on their regional networks, whether it be Sportsnet in Canada for the Jets, MSG Plus for the Sabres, and the Islanders, and then Bally Sports Midwest for the Blues. But it's their studio, and I know you're not going to know who some of these guys are, but Paul Bissonnette, not Kevin Weeks, Anson Carter, who was with the Kings when we were, and Gretzky for a couple of games. He shifts back and forth with some of their coverage, but they're studio analysts, and they're still working on getting guys to call games because they don't have their pick of the litter like ESPN, who can actually go to Brendan Burke with the Islanders, even though it's an MSG network, and say, hey, we need you to call a national game. And Brendan Burke's one of the best in the business, homerism aside. Right now, they can grab him. They can get Darren Pang away from my Blues. They can actually get the pick of their litter. So TNT's still getting these guys involved with their hockey coverage because this is only the second or third year that they've actually had that since they jumped back to ESPN and expanded out with that. But Turner Sports, I wouldn't be the least bit surprised because we saw Fox Sports get away from they still have FS1 and FS2, but we've seen kind of that it's just, broadcasting, and then at that point it's syndicated coverage. I could see something where maybe Turner could expand out and get their own sports network with the way that things keep growing between baseball. You figure they've got baseball, college basketball, college football, the NHL and the NBA. The only thing that they're missing is the NFL
and
also golf coverage.
Yeah, and they won't get the NFL because the NFL is so entrenched where they are.
Right.
I lean Fox also because of the in-studio. I mean, when you talk about the in-studio for baseball, like I mentioned, that's a phenomenal. And then for the playoffs, they get somebody else. They get another superstar. One year they had Pete Rose. They had Hernandez one year. Pedro is in their booth every now and again.
Yep.
But when you talk about college football from when we were in our mid to late 20s, look who's on that pregame set for them. It's Brady Quinn, it's Matt Leinart, it's Reggie Bush, it's Charles Woodson, and it's Urban Meyer. You're talking guys who are all in the College Football Hall of Fame are on that desk every Saturday with the big new kickoff. And don't get me wrong, I love Herbie, I love Chris Fowler. There is just something about Gus Johnson and Joel Klatt on a Saturday. And again, it's a little homerism because they call a lot of Ohio State games. Um, but even when they don't, I find myself watching that game.
And think of Fox getting Pedro, kind of taking him away from TBS. I was actually looking up who some of the TBS guys are this year. But look at the lineup that they had for last year. They had Brian Anderson, Costas, Darling, and Francoeur in the booth during games.
Frenchie.
Look at their studio lineup here. And again, this was from last season. Granderson, Martinez, Jimmy Rollins as your analysts, Ernie, and Lauren Shahadi.
Lauren Shahadi is phenomenal.
Lauren Shahadi, first of all, the name fits. And secondly, who can ever forget some of her work on MLB Network where Jim Thomey's fixing her swing and who was it?
DeRosa.
Sean Casey beating her in the head.
And DeRosa just drooling over her. Listen, Lauren Shahadi is great. And let me put it this way. We heard my rant about the quote-unquote mothership, ESCCP NFL, and their coverage of the playoffs last year. Carl Ravitch calling Francisco Lindor, Jose Reyes, and that female in-studio analyst saying, oh, yeah, the last time the Mets were in the World Series, they wore the black uniforms, and Jeff Passan having to look absolutely stricken and say, did you forget they went to the World Series in 2015? And she had to say yes. That's great baseball analyst. Jackasses. Dude. But in all seriousness, they're losing their grip. And no one likes it more than I do.
Because, they are losing their grip because the options are so much better elsewhere. Fox has picked up their game, even though their cable exclusive only network is not,
But remember, it's so much better because no one else has made themselves beholden to one league.
Right.
With the amount of money they pay for Monday Night Football, they have to be beholden to the NFL, or they're never going to make a dime.
See, a CBS Sports Network, even though it's a lot of, it's kind of like the Ocho of sports networks, but still fantastic content on there. Yes. It's I gotta admit, one of my favorite things to watch before when I had cable originally on CBS Sports Network is I would love watching the CrossFit Games because their coverage was phenomenal on CBS.
Yeah, CBS Sports Network reminds me of what ESPN was when we were kids.
Right, but CBS is more of the reason why I lean a little bit more towards CBS and TNT, or I should say Turner. Actually, now you can almost kind of consider it Warner Brothers Discovery at this point. Yeah. Is and also with their coverage and the way that they emphasize AEW, with the networks as well. Warner Discovery is the fun network. With the graphics and the fact that they don't take themselves too seriously. CBS takes things very seriously, and it's a businessman's and it's a very intellectual and smart way to watch a game where it's not sensory overload getting shoved down your throat with graphics and overlays and everything. It's a very, very clean presentation, and that's what I think makes them so watchable and so enjoyable.
Do you want to know what popped into my head when you said that? And this is the giant child I am with the stuff I watch with my son. The two best actors in any Muppet type film were Tim Curry in Treasure Island and Michael Caine as Ebenezer Scrooge in Muppet Christmas Carol. Do you want to know why? They played it straight. They played it like they were acting in a normal movie. The Muppets were people. They played it straight. CBS plays it straight. Meanwhile, ESPN is trying to distract you with all the lights and everything else, and they think the Muppets are everything that they are, which is felt and voices and what have you. In other words, ESPN has become nothing but a bunch of puppets and clowns. and they're annoying. And the only good part of them is when Pat McAfee says something stupid on Saturdays, which is epic.
Right. Right. And then also with CBS and Turner basically kind of merging for a lot of their coverage, with the way that it kind of bleeds over, it's a lot of that as well.
It really is. And so speaking of that evil enterprise that I am literally almost to the day 9 months older than, we're going to be watching them on Thursday night. And
unless we actually have other options to watch instead.
Do we dare put McAfee on in his draft coverage?
I mean, I have NFL Network. I could actually dial them up instead.
Well, the NFL Network, ESPN's like the Ocho to NFL Network. They do all the same crap. It's just the same. It's the same network, just different.
Yeah, but it's different analysts because how much Kuiper or McShay am I going to watch? Would I actually? I think I'd rather watch Kyle Brandt.
And I like Rich Eisen a lot more. Is Boomer doing the draft this year?
I don't even know, but isn't Rich Eisen with Comcast NBC?
That's his the Rich Eisen show, but he's still the main anchor for NFL Network. He will be doing the draft, which is in Kansas City.
Yes.
I got to tell you something, and this is being a homer. That one in Cleveland was awesome.
Especially where Macho Man was up on stage.
Dude, I did a live react that night with Alex and Tone, and that was the night that the funniest thing before you was uttered on my show when he slid back after they took after Cincinnati took the wide receiver. He's like, "What the hell was that?" Just out of nowhere. Like they announced the pick, and I went, "Well, Joe Burrow's dead."
I love how you sent me the McAfee clip from the draft. Still one of the all-time greats.
That he was cutting a promo. I mean, he was just cutting. And an orangutan announced the 4th round pick. So we discussed yesterday Joel Klatt and Colin Cowherd. I want to bring this up because I don't really like Cowherd. But when he has people on that actually know what they're talking about and not just running their mouth, he seems to let them take over. So Klatt and Cowherd did, I want to say, did a full mock draft. I got up to pick 12 and threw my phone down. I was like, nope, I got to call Jim. We're going to talk about this. They each have Bryce Young going number 1 to Carolina.
Okay.
Which I think is signed, sealed, and delivered. Going to happen.
Yeah, I didn't make Kuiper, as you dubbed me last year, the entire first round, but I did do the first 12 because I figure I had to start. We were going to do 10, but then you figure the 2 teams behind that were Tennessee and Houston. Tennessee is going to be very intriguing, and then Houston's going to have what the Browns pick would have been for the 2nd year in a row because they still actually owe them one more for Cosby.
Yeah. Well, especially if you think, speaking of Cosby, somebody on TikTok did a thing where there was a sign outside of Friendly's and it said "Happy Endings with every meal." And I said, "Oh, Deshaun's going out to dinner tonight." I'm sorry.
I don't have anything to throw. I'm not going to bite the mic condom off of my microphone.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
I'm sorry. But yes, they own the 3rd one. So Bryce Young's going to go number 1 to Carolina, which I think is a mistake. And yes, it's a little bit of a homer as I wear the Blocko Big Rican shirt tonight. But his head coach is the quarterback. Frank Reich did wonderful things with Carson Wentz before he went overly stupid and yada yada. And really is kind of a whisperer. Do you know who the quarterback's coach in Carolina is?
No.
The well-traveled Josh McCown.
God, who was actually at one point thought to be an assistant coach here in Cleveland after he hung it up.
Exactly. There are now reports that Houston will bypass C.J. Stroud.
Did you mock anything up for tonight?
I didn't mock anything up. I will say that if Houston does what Joel Klatt said, that's going to be interesting.
Do you actually want to break down, or do you want to hear what I mocked for the first 12?
What did you mock for the first 12?
Okay. With the first pick, I have Carolina going Bryce Young. I think for them, it's the smart choice. I think right now he may not be, I don't know if he's going to be a franchise, but he's the right guy right now of the 4 quarterbacks that are going to be at the top of this draft. Which and for those of you who aren't aware or not exactly sure, that's in no particular order: Bryce Young, Will Levis, Anthony Richardson, and C.J. Stroud. And again, I was just rattling that off the top of my head. I did not want to slight Stroud by putting him 4th. But I think right now, Bryce Young, he's from the South. Alabama's going to be able to draw. It's going to be able to put a few extra butts in the seats there. He's got a Heisman. He's got a couple of national championships. I think right now, with the way that they're rebuilding, I think it's the smart choice.
I don't think he's going to play next year either.
Right.
Andy Dalton's there. So they're going to get the Ginger Bomber to play next year.
Houston at 2. I don't have him going C.J. Stroud.
You have him going defense, don't you? Jalen Carter?
Will Anderson.
Not a bad move. Especially with DeMeco Ryans as the new head coach.
And here's what I was actually I'm gonna hold off on that. Will Anderson is I think the best player in this draft.
I agree.
I don't see, even though Houston needs a lot of help and they don't have a guy under center right now, that I don't see how you don't pick him up here. And then you've got another J.J. Watt type guy in that franchise for the next 6 or 7 years as your cornerstone on defense. And then you do like what they did originally, where they shored up the defense. Then they brought in Watson and Hopkins and started to turn that team around. Let's take all the jokes aside, is that, Houston was a very viable franchise once they got everything rolling, but it was the defense way that they built that first and then built the offense with that to bring in Deshaun Watson. And then Watson goes knucklehead, gets hurt and everything, and then things spiral out of control. They lose the locker room with Bill O'Brien and everything. Yeah.
Plus you have the pick at 12.
Right. 3 at Arizona, Jalen Carter.
Okay.
They don't need a quarterback. There's not enough skilled position player guys in this. They do, agreed, but they're not going to give up on Kyler as fast as Cleveland gave up on Baker for a guy of that size, taking number 1 overall. Especially with the money that they're paying him.
That's true.
Indy at 4.
They're going to take the kid from Florida.
C.J. Stroud.
And that's what this one guy who's an Ohio State guy on Twitter said, that now you're going to give him an elite running game, an elite offensive line, and Jim Irsay is going to spend money if he needs to. If they do that, look for them to be a landing spot for DeAndre Hopkins.
Because a lot of people are talking Indy moving out of 4 and moving back. That's a lot of the scuttlebutt that I'm hearing in the last probably 36 hours. But I think Stroud here makes sense. And here's why, number 1, I didn't have him going to Houston. There's multiple factors on this. And I know you and I got into this yesterday morning.
Yeah.
First of all, he's be familiar playing in that building with Big Ten championship games.
Yep.
Even though he didn't play in one as a starter, he was on the roster when they were there the 2 years before they shat the bed against Michigan. Yep. The fact that Ohio State plays on turf, this is also a turf
They all
scenario.
do.
What's that?
They all do. They're on that next turf.
Right. But it's it's climate controlled. It can exploit his game a little bit more.
Mhm.
It's even though he's not a track star like some of these other Ohio State quarterbacks to come out, it definitely works his skill set. But I think why he slides is that, yeah, he reads defenses, he can make the throws, but I don't see a whole lot of people talking about him being your franchise leader at that point. I think that's why he falls out of the top three.
Which blows my mind for two reasons. Number one, you have two franchise wide receivers who swear by the guy in Olave and the offensive rookie of the year, Garrett Wilson, who swear by him. Houston, you have a chance to put him with a guy who set records with him. You talk about and I'm going to go back a couple years to the 2021 draft. You brought in Burrow, then you brought in his wide receiver, and you went to a Super Bowl. Not saying it's going to happen right away, but Houston has a chance to do something very similar in bringing in him, and then at 12 taking JSN, if that's the way they went, which is what Joel Klatt said. But I like him at 4 there. You're absolutely right. Climate control. He's not the speed burner. He's got a good running game and a good offensive line. However, his wide receiver room is almost as thin as the Browns.
Right, but any of these guys being picked in the top 10 have to realize that where they're going is not the scenario that they wanted to be in.
Yeah, but there are landing spots that would be easier than Indianapolis with their first-year head coach, and they're going to take a quarterback. I wouldn't be shocked, to be honest with you, with the amount of alcohol that Jim Irsay consumes, that if Will Levis doesn't go here.
Well, funny you should actually mention Will Levis. I have him going at the very next pick at 5 to Seattle.
That I don't know about because of Geno. I think they wait a year.
I think Levis might be all around the most complete quarterback in the draft, but in terms of his skill set, his leadership, the ability to make his throws, I understand he doesn't have the starting experience. My concern about Will Levis, because I think when you look at all the quarterbacks coming out of this draft, when Baker came out of his draft, everyone thought that the best quarterback out of that draft was going to be Josh Rosen or Sam Darnold. Baker was successful for a couple of years. We didn't think that Josh Allen was going to be the only one that really kind of survived. And then if you actually think about it going even further, Mahomes came out of that draft too, didn't he?
Year before.
So then the year after, Lamar sets the world on fire, and he's on the back end of that.
Same year.
So Lamar wins an MVP, and he's drafted towards the back of that pack, and we don't know what, if anything's going to happen with him this year. So that's 5 potential starting quarterbacks. 3 of them are going to be starters, although one of them is going to be on his 4th team in 18 months. By the time training camp breaks. I like Levis here for just something about it seems as a better fit for the teams that need quarterbacks right now. I say between him and Anthony Richardson, I think he's a better pick. I think he's a safer option right now. My concern with Will Levis is just how shredded he is. And if we're not running into David Duval theory that he's so yoked that it's going to affect his throwing motion, especially with the colder climates out in Seattle, the colder and wetter climates, and tightening up. He might not need to be so lean by the time he gets to camp.
No, agreed. And when I hear the name Will Levis, I think of a name from a movie, and that's Bo Callahan. A lot of hype.
Because he went to Seattle too.
He did for $7 million less. Sorry. Look, you've got to show me stuff on the field. I said it about Tua. Oh, look who was right. Against good competition, he shrinks. I don't take him in the top 10, Jim. I'm sorry. I've watched YouTube videos of quarterback coaches breaking down like, oh, his size is this. Dude shrinks when there's a rush.
I think Seattle's going to reach here a little bit, but I think it's something that they're not. I don't know if they're going to. I don't know if Will Levis is going to be. There's always somebody that we don't think is going to be a franchise quarterback. There's something about this because nobody thought Lamar was going to be a top 5 NFL quarterback when the Ravens picked him at 22.
Was it 22 or 32?
I thought it was 22.
I thought they traded back into the first round to get him.
Okay, whatever it was. But there's something about it that there's a quarterback that is going to be a stopgap type guy, and then there's going to be somebody that we don't think of as that's going to actually elevate and jump off the page. For some reason, Will Levis is that guy for me, and I don't know why, because I agree with you. There's a lot of tape that I've seen of him that's really bad, but there's a lot of tape of him that I've seen that's really good, especially with that potential fit in Seattle.
And I see that. I think Seattle's got bigger needs than quarterback, to be honest with you. I think the emergence of Geno Smith is going to keep Will Levis, on the board at this point. If they're there and your mock is close to what people are doing, I can see them going defense here. I think Jalen Carter could fall to them with all the crap he's been getting into. Because remember, Seattle was successful when it was the Legion of Boom and a game manager type quarterback who had a good running game. That's how Pete Carroll won in college too. I think it's just me, but honestly, I think if there's a quarterback in this draft that's going to be the guy who jumps off the page that no one thinks about, it's going to be Richardson.
Yeah, film at 11 on that. This one's going to be very, very intriguing. Detroit at 6. Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher from Texas Tech.
They almost have to go wide receiver here. After losing Jameson Williams, they almost have to go wide receiver here.
I think right now, as good as they are, even after losing Jameson Williams, sure, that could throw a little bit of a wrinkle into things, but I think Wilson paired up on the opposite side from Aiden Hutchinson could make that an extremely scary defense because, let's be honest, it wasn't Detroit's offense that kind of faltered for them and just had them miss out on the playoffs by a tiebreaker. It was how banged up their defense got and just how well Wilson gets to the quarterback, and then you put him on the opposite side from Hutchinson. That could be how we all thought it was going to end up in Cleveland with Clowney and Garrett. That could be the next great outside tandem in the NFL.
Well, let me go back because Detroit has 6 and 18. So, yeah, you go edge rusher here, you go wide receiver at 18.
Mm-hmm.
So, yeah, no, I think you're absolutely right. Aiden Hutchinson, as much as it pains me to say, he's phenomenal. He's outstanding. And you get a guy on the other end who can do the same thing. That's a bookend that you don't want to
in
play.
Back-to-back years, nonetheless.
Exactly.
In the top 10.
Exactly.
7, Vegas, Devin Witherspoon, the cornerback from Illinois.
Has to happen. Their defensive secondary is putrid.
Here's the first wild card. Atlanta at 8, I think goes Richardson. You don't want Marcus Mariota as your quarterback.
No.
I think Richardson stays in the South, plays on turf, has played in the Georgia Dome before. I think because we saw how Atlanta's receivers and their running backs kind of excelled getting into track meets. I think right now Richardson is the most athletic quarterback in the draft, but I think he's the biggest project in the draft.
I agree with you on the most athletic. My pick for biggest projects is Will Levis, but I understand where you're coming from. That would be a great pick. Him and Kyle Pitts might be. Didn't he play? Pitts played with him.
Yes.
Ooh.
I think Pitts was Kyle Trask.
Yeah, it was Richardson on a team. Because if he was there,
yeah, I think he might have been redshirted or third string, but he was that was in Dan Mullen's system at Florida.
Okay. Yeah, that's intriguing. especially in that division.
Yeah, I kind of like Richardson there. For our buddy Alex, Chicago at 9, Peter Skoronski, the offensive tackle from Northwestern, staying close and also getting a guy to be able to keep Justin upright.
I go Paris Johnson here. I go left tackle.
I actually have Paris Johnson sliding back a couple of spots here. I like Skoronski a little bit more than Paris, not being biased or whatnot. I think Chicago knows that they're going to get a stud from either one of those two guys, and I think it's almost like 1A, 1B. I think they actually keep the home fans happy keeping the guy from Chicago.
I think they take Paris Johnson because he was Justin Fields' left tackle. So
I mean, you can't lose either way here.
You can't, and I lean Paris Johnson because of the history. Now, recently, Ohio State offensive linemen have been outstanding, as have Northwestern. But you're talking about a guy who played with him that knows Fields' clock. He knows, all right, Justin's going to run here. And he's already protected him once. I mean, Fields took most of his hits when he was running, when he was in Columbus, not when he was getting sacked. So I like Paris Johnson here to them. You can't go wrong with Skoronski. You're absolutely right.
Right. Philly at 10, rounding out the top 10 here. This one's going to be very, very fun if it comes to fruition. Nolan Smith, the edge rusher from Georgia.
I like Klatt's pick here for this team.
It would be, think of it, if they went Nolan Smith before you go into Klatt, that would be 3 members of their 2021 championship front 4 on Philly's front 4.
Agreed. They're going to go Bijan Robinson, the running back from Texas. Now let's talk about the closest thing to LaDainian Tomlinson we've seen in a long time, with the now highest paid quarterback in NFL history. You telling me with a guy like that in the backfield, they don't win that Super Bowl?
I will never justify for the rest of my days drafting a running back in the top 15.
See, I think
maybe even in the first round, unless it's a generational type talent like a Saquon Barkley or Nick Chubb.
I think Chubb, Barkley, and even Zeke, until he got paid, made that first round running back a reality. Zeke went stupid when he got paid. That had nothing to do with his talent.
Me personally, Bijan Robinson's a great player, but I think honestly, for my money, the best running back in this draft is Deuce Vaughn from Kansas State, and I don't see him anywhere above the middle of the second round.
I don't think Deuce Vaughn will get the love because of where he went to school. I got a feeling that Deuce Vaughn is going to be just like he could be the next, and this is a very lofty comparison. Who was the last great Kansas State player to split like that? Darren Sproles? Yeah, but Sproles was a niche. Sproles didn't start getting carries till he started returning kicks. It's different.
That's where I think Deuce Vaughn, with his size, he's 5'5", 176, but he can catch out of the backfield. He could be he could be a split back.
Thought.
What's that?
Scary thought. He goes 32 to Kansas City.
That could be interesting, but that if I were to forecast out, I could definitely see that. Tennessee at 11, I think, goes Paris Johnson. I was seeing some mocks that actually had Will Levis going to them. They're not going to go quarterback in the top 3 rounds back-to-back years, especially even though he stunk last year. I still don't think how they give up on Malik Willis or whatever his name was.
I think you're right. No one cares, though. Not that you're right, that he's terrible. I can see Levis going here.
If he falls that far, I think Tennessee gets him. I don't think so. I think Levis is off the board in the top, certainly within the top 10, and Tennessee's going to be right out. I think the only way that Tennessee can get him is if they actually go up and get him.
Here's my question. Who do you have at 12? And then let's talk about 11.
You're going to love me for this.
You have
And
JSN at 12.
JSN.
Okay.
Here's the hilarity of this. Do we want to talk about the elephant in the room if JSN goes to 12, goes to Houston at 12?
What's the elephant in the room?
It would be back-to-back years that an Ohio State player got drafted at 12 or a receiver got drafted at 12 coming out of Ohio State, and who would have owned that pick?
Cleveland Browns.
The Cleveland Browns.
Last year it would have been 13, and that was Jamison Williams, who went to Detroit.
But if you think about it, it's also back-to-back years that the Browns could have had their pick of one of the 2 or 3 best receivers in the entire draft in the top half of the first round. They trade for Watson. They miss out on all 3 of them, including 2 Buckeyes. And then arguably the best receiver in this draft would have been right there for the pickings. And then you're going to miss out on him as well because you're still devoid of draft picks for another year.
Yeah, I will say this. If JSN would have played last year to the level he played the year before, he'd go in the top 5. But the injury, of course, does that. So you went with Klatt at 12. That's why I think Houston's going to end up picking C.J. Stroud, because they know they're going to be able to put the 2 of them together. And right there is how you build your franchise. You have these 2 young dudes coming in, a new head coach. They have rapport. They have timing down. That's humongous. But let's go back to 11 and the Will Levis thing. Could you, if they don't have to go quarterback here, see Tennessee taking JSN after trading A.J. Brown last year?
See, Tennessee is probably, of all the teams in the top 10, maybe even the top 12 as we just broke down, Tennessee is probably the most intriguing one because they're on the verge of a playoff berth year in and year out, and yet you've got Tannehill, who's still capable. You drafted a kid very high last year that was expected to go in the first round and didn't, slid. You still got him for a bargain in the 3rd round, did not perform very well at all. And it's largely the same team. And yet now we're disputing, do we actually go, what does this team do Thursday night?
Unless the rumors are true.
Right.
Because then if the rumors are true, this is a total rebuild.
Because they're not, yeah, you're right. Indianapolis is rebuilding. The Titans are a mishmash. Jacksonville is the class of that division right now.
Scary as it is. Come on, sunshine. I can't stand Trevor Lawrence. Hey, let me ask you this. If you're
Who's the 4th team in that division I'm missing?
Indy, Jacksonville, Houston, and Tennessee.
Okay. So, yeah, Houston's a mess. Houston's at least a 3-year rebuild wherever we look at. Indianapolis could be a fringe team. Tennessee slides back. This is Jacksonville's for the taking because they're this good and got in and pushed Kansas City to their limit and is only going to get better.
They are going to get better. Now, here is where I want to ask you a couple of questions later down in the draft. We all know the BS around what's going on in New York.
Mm-hmm.
It's going to get done. It's going to get done.
It's just all a matter of does it get done tonight? I can't see a scenario where they don't have this done by Thursday because they actually want to know what to do with those picks.
Agreed. So the Jets at 13. I'm going to ask you questions about certain teams. The Jets at 13. Are you going skill or defense? And Aaron Rodgers is your quarterback. skill or defense?
Defense, because at that point you've got quite a few skill guys now, but you've got a 39-year-old quarterback in a brand new system and contemplated retirement. I think you got to go. I think you have to go defense there, especially with the way that all the other teams in that division retooled their defense. Buffalo has still got a great defense, and hopefully they can turn things around. Miami went out and got Jalen Ramsey to dramatically improve their defense. Sure, say what you want about Jalen Ramsey. Miami's secondary was absolutely atrocious down the stretch and in that playoff game, and that's going to help them out a lot, regardless, again, what you think of him.
Jim, if not for Eli Apple, Jalen Ramsey is the absolute joke of that Super Bowl.
I agree. As a Rams fan, that hurts me to say, but sometimes a change of scenery really helps out a guy here. But and then, New England's a mess. So you don't really have to worry about them, but New England always finds a way to have a really good defense. So you've got to keep up with the Joneses on defense in that division, especially when the worst team in their division has got a guy named Belichick on the sideline.
Agreed. Now, let's talk about said New England Patriots and all the scuttlebutt that they're going to try and get rid of Mac Jones. Could you see New England sending Mac Jones to a place and getting one of the top 10 picks?
I don't think Mac Jones is worth a top 10 pick.
We have a top 10 of Mac Jones, and they're number 14.
Where? Who's gonna be dumb enough to bite on that? Who's gonna want to be able to move back? Because all these teams need moves. There's going to be 4 quarterbacks off the board in the top 10 because there's at least 6 or 7 teams that need one.
Atlanta. If Richardson or Levis don't fall, Atlanta.
I could see Arthur Blank making that move.
I mean, Mac Jones and the number 14 pick for number 8 for Belichick to go up and do something insane.
Yeah, but Belichick also at that point has never drafted a quarterback that high. I mean, really up until they drafted Mac Jones, he said he would never draft a quarterback in the first round. And then if that were the case, he'd be doing it 2 years in a row, basically 2 out of the last 3 years.
Agreed. But the question becomes, he doesn't have much time left. There is no more heir apparent as Josh McDaniels is currently ruining the Raiders. I think Atlanta makes that move as I drop my phone and scare the cat. So I'm moving this back a little. You can see where the air conditioner vent is compared to my chair, which I think was wonderful placement for me. All right. Yeah, I can see that happening. Now, let's talk Green Bay. If the deal is done by the draft, Jordan Love's your starter. Are you pissing off your fan base even more and getting Jordan Love a wide receiver?
I think you almost have to because you stripped the covered bear. Because Devontae Adams is long gone, and then Rodgers' favorite target's going to go with him.
And yeah, Lazard's already with the Jets.
Yep. So you don't have a choice.
So you've got to take the kid out of Tennessee. Who, by the way, we're not talking about him either. We haven't talked about Hendon Hooker yet.
I don't know if anyone's going to take a first-round flyer on Hendon Hooker coming off of that injury, though.
How about Hendon Hooker at 20 to Seattle?
I think if Seattle's going to go quarterback, they're going to do it at 5, and then they're actually going to get somebody around him at 20.
Unless Jalen Carter falls.
Jalen Carter's not going to fall out of the top 3. Worst case scenario, he's not going to be there at 5 because if you think Carolina goes Bryce, Houston goes Stroud, the next 2 off the board are going to be Anderson Wilson. I'm sorry, Anderson Carter.
You think Carter goes 3 at that point in time?
I would think so. I mean, if Indianapolis is talking about possibly moving out of 4, or somebody's talking about passing on CJ Stroud at 2, it's there's going to be a quarterback there.
Look,
Even if Levis doesn't go as high as we think he is, somebody's going to, if Indianapolis wants him, they're going to either have to take him at 4, or they're going to have to package up something and get back in, around 15, maybe between 12 and 15 to get him.
and I can't believe I'm about to say this. Or does the John Harbaugh, Steve Bisciotti brain trust take Hendon Hooker at 22? Could Hendon Hooker put this entire draft on its ear?
I could say yes and I could say no, because at one point, if they don't, that means that you've got a contingency plan in place and you've basically are ironing out the final details of signing Lamar and putting this thing behind him, or you're trading and you're basically moving out of there. You're moving out of 22, or you're basically drafting Lamar, but only 3 or 4 years younger with the same knee problem.
I don't know. I think it's very interesting what each team is going to do. The Giants at 25, they've got to put their money where their mouth is after the big contract with Danny Dimes and the fact that Saquon's come out and said he will not sign the franchise tender.
Jacksonville at 25 is interesting.
Jacksonville at 24 would be extremely interesting.
Okay, I'm sorry. Original slot was 25. They're picking 24 because Miami forfeited. Yeah. Let's talk about one extra little wrinkle. The Buffalo Bills at 27, technically 28, possibly still need there's forecasting for them defensive back, but one of their key defensive backs has been cleared.
Someone needs to smack that man upside his head. It's not worth it. It's not.
Let's see what it looks like with OTAs. If he comes out and he's been cleared by team doctors, league doctors, and at least 2 independent doctors, as reports are saying, if he's completely cleared, first of all, who are we to stop him? And secondly, if he's completely cleared, he's cleared.
That's true. That's just me personally. I after going through that, I don't think I could allow a family member who I cared about to do that again. Because you don't know if he's going to get hit like that again. You don't know what's going to happen. But yeah, Buffalo going defensive secondary would be interesting there. Buffalo going running back would be interesting there.
I don't know if they draft running back or if they try and go out and get somebody in free agency, because it's now the story that will not die, possibly going out and seeing if they could lure Kareem Hunt away. Because they're moving on from Devin Singletary.
Yeah. Is Kareem under contract this year for Cleveland?
You give me about 30 seconds, I'll find out.
Here's one for you. At 17, is Pittsburgh helping out Kenny Pickett, or are they rebuilding their defense?
I don't know how much I think they need to do something to shore up with Kenny Pickett, because Allen Robinson's, first of all, not worth. I mean, he's 945 years old, but you got to remember, you've also got you got TJ Watt coming back 100% this year.
That's huge. So if JSN goes 12, you still have As far as wide receivers in this draft, you still have Quentin Johnson, you still have Jalen Hyatt, you still have Jordan Addison, you still have Zay Flowers, Cedric Tillman, who could be big, Marvin Mims from Oklahoma.
Kareem Hunt is not under contract.
He'd be such a good fit.
It's right now the Browns running back room looks of Nick Chubb, John Kelly, Jerome Ford, and Nate McCrary.
Maybe they can sign Lamar to play running back.
I mean, he is the best running back who can throw in the NFL. Because Kareem Hunt, according to Spot Track, is estimated to draw somewhere between $6 and $7 million, between $6 and $8 million.
On Buffalo, I offer him 6.5.
Yeah, he signed a 2-year, $10.3 million extension in September of 2020. So yeah, I believe he is a UFA. Yes, he is an unrestricted free agent as it stands right now, because he was making 6.2 last year. I don't think he gets 6. I'm wondering if he maybe takes a pay cut for 5, even though he's going to be 28 and he's going into his prime, although he was not utilized very well. I think him in Buffalo, if they can make the numbers work, would be really, really nice, because the Buffalo Bills they only have 6.1 million in cap space, but they're still going to be able to move some of that salary around if they have to.
Yeah, they can always look at Josh Allen and go, we'll pay a little bit more down the road if you take a little bit of a cut here so we can do this. There's a lot of interesting things. I mean, this is going to be this is probably one of the most fun drafts we're going to have for a long time.
Because because if you also think about it, it's not like, we all know pretty much who's going 1. And then if you figure 2 through 6 is a crapshoot. We know the names that are going. You know what it reminds me of? 2017 with Baker in that quarterback class, because you knew the names, you just didn't know where they were going to get slotted.
The 2018 draft?
Yeah.
I think the surprise pick of that one was Denzel Ward at 4.
Yeah.
So here's what I'll run through real quick. Valentino, Ian Valentino from Pro Football Focus. Bryce Young to Carolina. Anthony Richardson to Houston. Will Anderson to Arizona. CJ Stroud to Indy. Seattle takes Jalen Carter. Devin Witherspoon at 6. Christian Gonzalez, the D-back from Oregon, to the Raiders.
But that's only because Witherspoon's already off the board.
Yeah. Tyree Wilson, the edge rusher from Texas Tech to Atlanta. Miles Murphy, the edge rusher from Clemson to the Bears, which I think is stupid. Lucas Van Ness, the edge rusher from Iowa to the Eagles. There's Will Levis going at 11 to Tennessee. Number 12, everybody's got JSN as the first wide receiver off the board.
The only thing, for me, I think Seattle with Levis, and we keep coming back to Levis. I think Levis to Seattle makes the most sense, but I think for him, Tennessee would also be a very good fit, because in my mind, could they maybe want to do something with Malik Willis, and then possibly could they be looking to trade or release or something with Tannehill to free up a little bit of salary? And that'll also hinge on what potentially happens with Derrick Henry.
That's true. 2 other picks I want to tell you about on this one so far. he has New England taking Paris Johnson. He has Skaronski going to Pittsburgh at 17.
Yeah, because Pittsburgh's offensive line was an absolute shit show of the last couple of years.
Here's one that I think would be big. DeJuan Jones, the other tackle from Ohio State, going to the Chargers at 21. Let me see here. That shocks me a little. Why would you do that? He has Jacksonville taking a defensive back.
Oh God, who was?
Here's one for. He's got Dallas taking Adiba Ware, the D tackle from Northwestern. He has Buffalo taking Mazi Smith, the D tackle out of Michigan. He's big defense in this first round. The Eagles taking Kaylee Ringo, the defensive back out of Georgia. Yeah.
Some of the mocks that I'm seeing, actually, one that really caught my eye was the Cleveland Browns in the third round having Gervon Dexter, the defensive tackle from Florida, fall into their lap as well. Especially how they've retooled that front seven. So you put, he's 6'6", 310. So could definitely, because I think you're going to see with the way that they've gone out and signed a lot of guys, you're going to see them kind of move on from guys like Tommy Togiai that just did not work. If the Browns actually, if Gervon Dexter falls to them, not only as a Florida homer, I would like that because of the way that he could put pressure on and because you're looking to free somebody up for Miles. But if Miles gets double teamed or if somebody's coming off the edge and both of those guys get picked up, you got to have a big guy in the middle to plug the hole. Tommy Togiai was not that guy.
Tommy Togiai should have never left Ohio State when he did.
I also think that was Andrew Berry trying to placate to the fan base of getting a defensive guy from Ohio State because he wasn't ready.
No, he wasn't ready to leave, and he wasn't ready for the Browns to take him where they did. Now, Togiai is serviceable when you have dynamic players around him. Unfortunately, the Browns didn't have dynamic players around him. They had an oft-injured Myles Garrett, and they had a who gives a shit Jadeveon Clowney.
Right. And that's probably the best offseason move that the Cleveland Browns have made is,
getting rid of him?
waving him bye-bye.
What was the other thing I was saying? Oh, they had the Jets going offensive tackle too.
We also figure if your quarterback's going to be out there with a walker and tennis balls on it, you kind of want him to stand upright a little bit more.
The ayahuasca that he takes makes him not feel anything, so he can just do what he wants.
Yeah. Can you believe they're moving on from a guy who wants to sleep with your mom to a guy who's actually going to be interested in their grandma, or basically going to look like he's dating their grandma?
Stacy's Nana just doesn't have the same ring as Stacy's mom does. What? It doesn't. It doesn't.
Rachel Hunter was Stacy's mom. Don't you tarnish that video for me now.
Well, let me see. He was with Shailene Woodley. He was with Olivia Munn.
He was with Danica.
He was with Danica. You notice the hair color's getting lighter as he goes?
Yeah. And shorter.
Oh, Olivia Munn was pretty tall.
No, I'm talking like the hair length.
Oh. Yeah, no. And now he's going to. And apparently, Joe Namath has said he can wear 12. Look, all Rodgers needs is a guarantee in that Super Bowl, and he's basically Joe Willie to begin with. Think about it.
It's never going to happen. He's going to be the third best team in that division, regardless of what happens if he goes there.
Look, I think you're wrong. I think Miami is not going to be nearly as good as people think they are because Tua's not going to be able to play for long. Jalen Ramsey notwithstanding. New England is terrible. The AFC East is going to turn into a shootout between the Jets and the Bills.
And you know what's funny is that the
Jets are missing was competent quarterback play.
I think the Bills are still the class of that division, but they're not where we thought they were.
No.
This could be a scenario where the Bills could end up still winning 10, 11 games, but they almost kind of win the division out of by default.
You mean like New England used to every year?
Right.
I'm going to say this.
And it's not – well, New England would beat up on everybody, and then somebody would kind of sneak in on the back end. This is going to be a scenario – this is very much going to be like how the AFC North was a couple of years ago, and not when the Browns were in the playoffs. But you had Pittsburgh, Cincinnati, and Baltimore all in a shootout, but one never distanced themselves from the other. And it wasn't because of how evenly matched they were. It's because nobody wanted to take charge.
Yeah. I will say this and make a prediction. If the Jets get this draft right and fill in the holes, your Bills could be in some trouble.
I agree.
Because they have somebody who can take Diggs right out of the game. And I don't think the Bills have anyone that can cover Garrett Wilson.
No, it's maybe Tre'Davious White, assuming he comes back 100% from his injury.
Yeah, but he's got to be 100%. You can't have 90% Tre'Davious White trying to cover Garrett Wilson while you have Alan Lazard on the other side and Breece Hall coming out of the backfield and a retooled offensive line with Mekhi Becton and possibly, who knows, maybe they get Paris Johnson or DeJuan Jones from Ohio State who block for good running backs and good quarterbacks.
Well, on that note, ladies and gentlemen, we're gonna put a nice little bow on this one because we're gonna be back with you guys in our normal slot on Thursday night at 9. But before we go, to steal one of Mike's lines before we turn into pumpkins, Mike, would you like to actually tell that story that you told me the other night? Because I need a laugh and I need to clip something for the OTRs.
So, because we're down in Georgia and I can no longer wear the winter clothes that I wear to work all the time, I purchased a couple of golf shirts from, as you see, my kitchen and my hallway, and the cat for that matter. Purchased a couple of nice golf shirts. One's in a blue and one's in an orange. Shocker. Well, my lovely wife, who we have referenced several times on this show in the past and will several times in the future, gives me a hug around my belly and says, "I love you, pumpkin. I was wearing the orange shirt." I don't believe it was malicious. I could be wrong, but it was so perfectly well timed. I have to believe some thought went into that.
Could have been worse. You could have,
Had a green hat on.
No, you could have a boboed, like double dragon a bobo through the wall like the Kool-Aid man.
That's when I wear the red one. What was Dane Cook? Oh yeah. Oh no.
or the Gabriel Iglesias gift basket. Oh, Kool-Aid.
That's in my top 3 bits of all time.
That's up there.
That, Robin Williams explaining golf in a Scottish accent,
Sebastian Maniscalco at Subway.
No.
Or for me, Taylor Tomlinson, anything.
Jeff Dunham when Peanut ordered Chinese food.
Oh, I'm going to be flooding your inbox with a YouTube channel that I actually just picked up. They're a couple that's been together about 13 years, and all they do is play pranks on each other to this day.
Is that the one with the one's a cop and the other one is like where have you ever seen the one on TikTok where the husband constantly shoots balloons full of like paint or something on them?
Yes, yeah, it's not that one. It's close though. Like the prank that I think I saw, it might have been about 6 months old, and you could definitely tell like a lot of their stuff is like scripted. But on this one, he put a Bluetooth speaker in the trunk. She drove, and he kept hitting a notification on his phone to play honking sounds, like car horns coming from the back while she was driving. To the point where she's rolling down her window, swearing at people as they're going around her, but they're not doing anything because she doesn't know any better.
The ideas.
The other one that I actually saw with them, she's like just coming home from somewhere. With the way that she's dressed, you're almost thinking strip club. But I'll say that because it's like you could definitely tell they're California or like, you know, Arizona or something, just with the outfits.
Employee or
You'll be able to tell when I send you the video. It's for Valentine's Day, and you know, she's like, "What is this?" And he's surprising her for Valentine's Day. So he's got like rose petals all the way, you know, through the house, and then they've kind of got like a barn door thing, you know, for the laundry room, thinking, okay, there's like, you know, something special in there. So he's got like the rose between the door handles and everything. Opens it up, and there's a Louis Vuitton, not so much like the actual bag, but like the shopping bag, like the one that you buy for like $1 at the register. And she's like, "Oh, what is this?" She opens it up, and it's brand new dishwashing detergent or laundry detergent. She's like, "What the fuck is this?" He's like, "But it's brand new." She threw it at him full.
dude, he wore that.
But but it's I mean, you could definitely tell it's scripted, but some of the reaction you had to tell was like legit. But yeah, the one about shooting the milk balloons at each other is hilarious, especially the bloopers where they miss.
No, my favorite part of that is when the kid's involved and throws it over her head.
That's like my addiction anymore. Is just those YouTube shorts, like trying to hone in on TikTok's thing is just like the couple's just messing with each other. I told you about the one that the Campese's put up the other day, which I still will not send you because I don't want to be getting the call from Mrs. Rican.
No, you don't want that smoke.
And I don't want the call from you when she pulls them on you.
Yeah, I might just paint you, get you not blackout drunk at the tailgate party and paint you blue and orange and drop you in the middle of Athens, Georgia.
I wouldn't mind because, you know, no Ruggles field goal still hasn't landed yet.
Very true.
So, ladies and gentlemen,
Watch him
before my
kick for the
computer,
Browns.
what's that?
Watch him kick for the Browns because Katie Burke is
So before my Chromebook dies, because the one cord's got the microphone, the other one's got the USB end of the monitor. So before my Chromebook dies, ladies and gentlemen, we will see you guys on Thursday night. We know we ran a lot longer than expected tonight. We will be back with
stuff though.
Right. But we'll be back with you guys on Thursday night. Mike, any plugs?
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.
No, I will be working on a Big Rican episode, which I haven't done in forever because quite honestly, I've put more focus on the wise guys and with moving and working and everything. I talked to Alex the other day. He was at a family get together tonight for his parents' anniversary. So happy anniversary, Alex's mom and dad. But I think the next Big Rig episode will actually be a Big Rig and Baseball show. We're going to dive in. We didn't talk about Max tonight, but Alex and I will definitely get into Max when we go on. What's new with the Blue Note?
Still looking for a topic for tomorrow. We're kind of cutting back to once a week unless things really kind of jump off the page. We actually had our first right after the Masters. We did our first golf show.
Yeah,
and the PGA Tour and their fan base needs to move on from the Tiger Woods schematic. He's done. He's not going to be anything that you expected here. He's certainly not going to win another major in his career. He's not going to catch Jack. He'll be lucky if he even wins the one more tournament to break the tie. For most all time with Sam Snead. But Live Golf continues to be a joke. But we'll probably have something in the pipe right now. It certainly is looking like we could be doing something on the Kings, the Sacramento Kings, if they if they win Game 4 tomorrow. The Lakers right now smacking the Grizzlies around, even though John Morant's not in the lineup. But we'll have something, special in the pipe. I'm also planning on maybe getting a little. We're certainly going to get something revved up for the Indy 500 here because qualifying, I want to say, is next week, which is weird because they do qualifying nearly a month before their next race.
The race is Memorial Day weekend, right?
Yep. So they actually, the IndyCar series usually plans most of the entire month around that event.
I mean, of the races that I would watch as a kid, Daytona, of course, the Daytona 500, not the Brickyard, not the Pepsi shootout, but but going to my aunt's house every Memorial Day weekend, the Indy 500 was on the TV.
Yeah, but. I got some things in the pipe here. Figure out, where to go from there. A couple of big UFC fights coming up here before too long. And then also maybe even a little bit of wrestling here because we got some chaos with AEW coming up with not even so much for upcoming shows, but some guys with their contracts coming up. Kenny Omega and the Young Bucks are renegotiating. Hangman Adam Page negotiating. Some major stars in Japan negotiating to possibly come over. And then, still the entire wrestling world feeling the fallout from the shit show that was night 2 of WrestleMania a few weeks ago.
Cody Rhodes and Brock Lesnar are going to headline SummerSlam, I guess.
No, the next pay-per-view in Puerto Rico, like next week or something, or in 2 weeks, because they're still trying to plot Cody to finally beat Roman Reigns at SummerFest, as Bret Hart called it.
Hey, I went to the SummerSlam that was at Gund Arena when the Undertaker and Mankind had the
Boiler Room Brawl. Adam got kicked out of that one.
I was with Adam.
Yep.
It was Adam, Nick, Jason, and me. And I got the ticket that day. I sat up on the top deck. I was against the top wall. But I think I only paid $40 for it.
Yeah. Although what's funny is that I actually heard driving into work Thursday morning, I actually heard them on Cleveland radio announcing sale tickets for SummerSlam in Detroit. And they said tickets start as low as $25. And I'm thinking to myself, I don't know if I've ever heard local radio advertising sales for an out-of-town event like that.
It's because ESPN's in bed with WWE.
Right. Which is why I like AEW so much more, with the fact that they're in bed with Discovery.
I like everybody who's not in bed with ESPN.
very much. So on that note, everybody, have yourselves a great rest of your night. Have a great weekend. We will see you back on Thursday night, and then we'll probably also have an idea for the next Wise Guys show after that. Keep tabs on both of our social media pages, and a couple other things we're working on. We might be looking at a little bit of a new logo, maybe tweaking that. Where the social media platforms are coming. That's something that I'm thinking by Memorial Day we might have something set up, but we'll let you know about that. Hopefully not by Thursday night show, but maybe the week after when we're back in our regular slot for our first show in May.
Sounds like playing, man.
Everybody, have yourselves a great night.
Take care, everybody.
Sometimes maybe good, sometimes maybe shit.